Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. Today we're going to be talking about probably one of the easily the most controversial story that we've ever tackled on the marathon so far. Like, from the beginning of Doctor Who, this is easily by far the most talked about episode in terms of controversy. It has divided the fan base. It is Series 12's Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children, written by Chris Chibnall and is directed by Jamie Magda Stone. And right off the bat, the controversy is a bit silly. Most of the controversy is based around the show. The story does something. It's a massive twist which changes which is supposedly, I should say, changes the very fabric of the show itself. This is a corner of Doctor Who which, when it turns, it's never going back. Dealing with certain aspects about the Doctor's very origins, and like that is a very, touchy subject for Doctor Who fans, because the origins of the Doctor should be kept a mystery. Why she left Gallifrey, why they left Gallifrey, should be kept a mystery. However, this story at least delves into certain of those elements, and it doesn't really change anything in terms of how the show functions. After this story aired, Doctor Who will still act as it usually does. However, in terms of details, in terms of the stuff that you can actually look up on and mythologize about the Doctor, has changed, because this story has dealt with a lot of things. This story also follows up from the story of the Timeless Children, which has been present since the second episode of the entire Jodie Whittaker era, with the Ghost Monument, with a creature stating the Timeless Children, the Timeless Child, only for then that story arc to be essentially abandoned until Spyfall and the whole big mystery of this Timeless Child, this memory that the Doctor has, which she hasn't experienced. It's a memory of a child standing outside of a gateway, a portal. It's something that has been brought up before in other episodes. We've seen it most recently in the story Can You Hear Me? And this story also follows up from the storyline from the previous episode, The Haunting of Vala Diodati, about the lone Cyberman trying to get what he wants. And the Doctor and crew must now go into the future to stop Ashard, the lone Cyberman, from becoming basically the supreme Cyberman, to bring the Cybermen back from the fallen empire, back from extinction. And this story has a lot to go for it, and this story also adds a lot of other things in this story which just is absolutely bonkers. So right off the bat, what I love about this story, the pre-credit sequence in the first episode, that beautiful the speech by Patrick O'Kane, who voices who is the lone Cyberman. He does this narration about empires that once that have fallen shall live again, that kind of thing, as we get a zoom up on a Cyberman helmet, and it goes into the eye stalk, and then we got the Doctor Who logo. It's simple, it's effective, it's mainly to build up atmosphere for the rest of the story, which is really strange, because actually no, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect in terms of setting up this story. What's really strange, however, is what happens after the credits, as we are suddenly transported into 40s, 50s, 60s Ireland, as a family, a couple find themselves abode on a baby that was just found in the middle of nowhere. This is Brendan, who quickly grows up. We don't see much of his childhood, but we mainly see him as a young man, played by Evan McCabe, and it's just a strange subplot that seemingly is completely disconnected from the rest of the episode. Nothing in the actual episode ties up with it. There's a bit in the episode where like the kid is sick and it's like, right, we need to call a doctor. Then it cuts into the future with Dr. Graham, Yaz and Ryan, and they're basically going on a battle, finding a small settlement of humans, only 7 left in this sector of space, because basically at this point it's the end of the Cyberman human wars, and essentially both species are on the brink of extinct. They're not dead, but they are like in very few in numbers, as the Doctor and the crew come in advance and they befriend these people. Most of them, though, like they are people, you do really feel like you do connect them, but they are mostly red shirts. Like their leader at the start of the story, I can't remember his name, but he tells everybody, it's like, we're not soldiers, we're not like fighters, we don't have like guns and weapons to fight the Cybermen. Our main goal is just to run away and survive. We're doctors and nurses and teachers and mechanics and carpenters. We're just normal everyday people. The only one I really can remember is Ravio, played by Julie Graham, who you might remember as playing a villain in the Sarah Jane Adventures. And she spends a lot of time with Graham in this story. So we got 2 actors who have previously played villains in the Sarah Jane Adventures working together as the good guys defeating Cybermen in a Doctor Who episode. It's very strange, but it's really cool. And she does a great job here. But like I said, like, they're interesting in the fact that you feel like these are normal people and you want to see them survive. But apart from that, like, that's really their function in the story. But that's just basically them in the narrative. They're not important, but not important in terms of the narrative. They don't have like any twists or anything revolving around them. And there's also this young man who sees his brother get killed earlier on in the episode by some Cybermen drones. We'll get onto that in a bit. And essentially, like, that's mainly like the first episode is them trying to survive the Cyberman, and more specifically the lone Cyberman. The Doctor like quickly like sets up a defense system, and is like, you can clearly see that like the Doctor has like she's adapted. She's going in basically strangely going straight on the defense when she gets onto a planet, which is very unusual. Usually the Doctor like explores and stuff, but to go into a story where all our characters are already set like on a mission, very unique for this story. Though again, like I said, it follows on from the previous story, The Haunting of Ala Diodati. So you could consider this a trilogy of episodes, because like stories in the Stephen Moffat era, part 1 and part 2 feel very different, and and each episode is supposed to feel like its own thing, as well as being part of the bigger story, sort of like a really small mini arc. A great example to compare this story to in terms of pace and structure is the finale of series 9 with Face the Raven, Death in Heaven and Hell Bent. Death in Heaven? Heaven Sent. That was really bad of me, I do apologise. And like, that's mainly like the bulk of the story at the start of the story, is that they team up. They get split up quite early on. As we get these cyber drones, which the idea of Cybermen using drones like a squad army before they go in for the kill, great idea. Absolutely love it. And this is like a thing that like a lot of people are like, this was really silly, this was really goofy, and I just remember watching this the first time and being like, that was really silly, is that the drones take the form of just Cybermen helmets. It's also important to note that the Cybermen designs here are mainly the Cybermen from the revived era, mainly from the 2006 story Rise of Cybermen and the Age of Steel, with like the logo disappearing. So the logo's not there, so it's trying to imply that they are Mondasian Cybermen and not parallel universe Cybermen. But like, I don't know, my brain just constantly connects them to the parallel universe Cybermen, so that's just a nerd rant right there. But let's actually get into details. Let's get into stuff that's more interesting. So yeah, our characters split up. This gets really like interested. The Doctor really like, she's like, after everything gets destroyed, and she's like, right, I need to confront the Cybermen. You guys need to run hell. There is no way you can help. Putting you in even slightly as a little bit of in the line of fire will get you killed, or will get you converted and turned into a horrible, soulless creature like the Cybermen. And like, you kind of get the feeling that like the Doctor feels really guilty for Bill in this scene. Really well handled. So, and she just the scene in The Haunting of Vala Diodati where she breaks the team structure. She does it again here, where she basically turns up. It's like, there's no arguing, there is no debate, and she like focuses more on Yaz, as she can tell that Yaz is probably the most likely one to fight back on this idea of them separate them. But they do, as Graham, Ryan and Yaz start heading out to the rest of the survivors on an escape cruise, an escape ship. However, Ryan gets separated, and the Doctor spends most of her time with Ryan and another survivor. This means that we've got a very unique situation in this story where the Doctor's teaming up with Ryan and Graham is teamed up with Yaz. And this story actually takes quite an advantage of it, especially from the Yaz-Graham perspective. They have had scenes together, and in spin-off media that have been bits where they team up. But to see it like on screen and to see that chemistry grow, and there's some really beautiful scenes. Graham basically acts as like the positive, the person to try and get everybody's spirits on track. Is like, right, we got a plan. It's a stupid plan, and it will most likely get us all killed. However, it's still a plan. We need to do something. At least it's something. And that's like the main bulk of his thing. And Yaz really sees this in this episode. Like, of course she's seen this this aspect of Graham being the jolly one in a dark situation loads of times, but here she really witnesses. There's a really sweet scene where she's talking to she hears him. They're like the four of them, because there's four of them. They're with the two other survivors, and Graham is like keeping everybody's hopes up, and Yaz just grabs him by the arm and is just she's laughing at him, and Graves is like, what are you laughing at? It's like, you're just such an amazing person. There's another really great scene, probably one of my favourite scenes of the 13th Doctor era, which doesn't feature the 13th Doctor, is when Graham and Yaz, they're basically trying to catch their breath. They found a place in this what they think is an abandoned cyber ship, to take their breath and relax. And Graham, thinking that everything's going to come up to him and destroy him and kill him and all that, or take him and convert them, he kind of smallly breaks down to Yaz, and it's like, I've seen the way that you speak to the Doctor and how you think she's the most amazing person in the world. I don't think that's true. I think you're the most amazing person in the world. And Yaz starts crying, and she's like, that's the most loving thing I've ever heard. And you're not such a bad human yourself, as they laugh about that. And it's like, well, I give this massive speech, and that's all you have to say to me. And they giggle it off, and it's such a sweet moment. It's just so, you really get a connection between them two in this story. Absolutely brilliant. When people talk about these two stories, these two episodes, people don't talk about that. They want to talk about the main thing, which we will get onto. But let's talk about the Doctor's aspect, because the Doctor's storyline with Ryan and the other survivor, they basically mostly deal with the lone Cyberman for the most part. Patrick O'Kane comes back in the role as the lone Cyberman from the previous episode. Surprisingly, originally in the script, the lone Cyberman was not to appear. He was supposed to be an exclusive for the Haunting of Vala Diodati, or at least would have a very minor role in these two episodes. But somebody decided, hopefully it was Chris Chibnall, maybe it wasn't, decided that we needed more lone Cyberman. We needed more a shard. And although he feels a lot of a downgrade compared to the previous episode, which is a shame because this is a Chris Chibnall written episode, and the previous episode was written by someone else, and you can feel she had more focus there, whereas Christian had more like bigger plot lines. So Ashard is mainly just like one of the antagonists in the story. But like he has that kind of poetic, but also that striking demeanor about him. That's when he gets into a room, you kind of just, you can just get the sense that he's feeling the room. And the way, like, he does have a bit of some cliched, like, I know you're in here, there is no escape kind of dialogue. The way Patrick O'Kane just gives that voice with that filter over the voice as well, as his human voice can be heard through things. So eerie, but just so well handled. This easily leads to one of my favourite scene in Ascension of the Cybermen, the first episode, in which, because the Doctor has stolen a ship of the Cybermen, Ashard can basically like send a projection of himself onto the ship, basically telling the Doctor, there's no point in fighting, come with us, we will convert you, there is no fight in this war. And the Doctor is just like you hate essentially yourself. You hate the fact because you are sort of human. You're still like half human, but you want to get rid of all that humanity. And the lone Cyberman, which in this story, like the other Cybermen call him leader, so he's a cyber leader. But I would just call him Ashard or the lone Cyberman. He's just basically like, yes, when the Cybermen were basically conquering and devouring other cultures to become part of their own, Ashard was actually a willing participant. He actually believed in the Cybermen cause. He actually like gave himself to the Cybermen. And when the conversion failed, that he was kept with his emotions, he was furious. Not just like with himself, but like life in general. That like felt like he was missing out on this great opportunity of losing all of his emotions. But he just found like because of it, he was most likely to use the Cyberium, the MacGuffin of the previous episode. So basically, he felt like this was kind of destiny, that he is the one, essentially the messiah of the Cybermen race, essentially. And the way like Patrick O'Kane like pronounces those words and like the thing, so good. It's so good. And it's really well handled. I mean, like, think about it. The villain of the story is a character who just hates himself. He's a character. Also, this is something which was like, it's kind of lost in the revived era Cybermen stories, but something that was like hinted, and it has certain elements in the classic Who, which is something which I think is a very vital important, which separates them from like other sci-fi villains like the Borg, which are a very similar concept. The Cybermen, as a culture and on Mondas or in their history, they did this to themselves. They wanted, essentially, at least early Cybermen, early Mondasians, went into the cyber conversions, got themselves converted, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to survive above all else. And one of the things that they thought was a part of a weakness, part was like obsolete at least, is their feelings, is their emotions. It's survival over anything else. It's basically the finale of that kind of concept, that philosophy, where it's basically survive and nothing else. So fascinating, so well handled. Like, I'm not going to be able to talk about like all the things I like, because there's so much to talk about, and there's so much there's just so much in this two-parter. So let's start like wrapping out Ascension and Cybermen. The Doctor, Ryan, and one of the survivors, they get to a place where the Doctor originally thought Sharmas was the place, but it's actually a person who protects the thing called a barrier, a portal that sends them to another world, maybe even another dimension. And he's basically guarding this gateway to so people can go through and protect the rest from the Cybermen. As the Doctor gets there, however, she discovers that it is actually a portal to a destroyed Gallifrey. She's actually found a portal home. And on Graham and Yaz's point of view, the Cybermen are basically coming in on all corners as the lone Cyberman has found himself under the ship, and we get introduced to a new Cybermen design, the Warrior class. These designs of Cybermen are so cool. However, really disappointingly, they don't really get much in terms of screen time, and when they do, it's completely wasted. They may as well have just been your normal average Cybermen in the story. Like, they didn't really need to introduce a new design here, especially when you consider in the next episode it'll introduce essentially another Cyberman race. And in the Brendan story, which keeps getting like seen, Brendan gets shot and falls off a cliff, but miraculously survives and is unharmed, as he becomes essentially a guard for Ireland. And then we see him like in his old age, where then all of a sudden his father and like a co-worker of his are seen, and they haven't aged, and they take him back into the office where they seemingly torture him and mention something about erasing his memories. And that's like where that storyline ends in Ascension and Cybermen. As when back at Doctor and Ryan, suddenly a figure pops out of the portal, and it is Shasha Dhawan's master, who basically pronounces that, "Be afraid, Doctor. Everything you're gonna know is a lie, and we're gonna change everything." I love Shasha Dhawan's master. Great performance. But that dialogue was so poorly written. It was so clearly, hey, get excited for the next episode. We're going to do some twists. Very poorly handled. And some of his dialogue in the next episode, The Timeless Children, is a lot like that. Now, I said Timeless Children takes a completely 180, as most of the focus becomes mostly about the Doctor and the Master on Gallifrey. We still have the plot with Graham and Yaz surviving the Cybermen. There's a scene which is kind of funny in concept where they're trying to hide from a shard, and what they do is they basically empty out a bunch of warrior class Cybermen and like wear their armor so they can go in disguise, as their ship is about to land on the planet that Shamus is on. Shamus, played by Ian McHelly, sorry. He surprisingly like a standout. Like, he's just such a minor character. Like, he's just this guardian who is he's aged a lot, and he's survived more than what he thought he was going to live. So he's just like enjoying life as much as he can. Like, everything will go to hell, but at least like he survived most of it. At least like he had some good times along the way. And Ian's performance is just, I don't know, like, for a character who's very minor, who only mainly focuses on the second episode, something about him just strikes me. With the exception of one scene which I did find really odd and really took away from the story. But anyway, let's get on to the most controversial element. The Master takes the Doctor to a part of Gallifrey inside the capital, where we get a lot of references to classic Doctor Who, most noticeably in the Pentagon, I can't remember how to pronounce it, assassinating presidents. This is clearly a reference to the Deadly Assassins, as well as the Matrix, which is a reference to that story, as well as stories like Trial of the Time Lord, where the Master basically was in control of the Matrix. And essentially he tells the Doctor that in the Matrix he found some information which essentially made him crazy, made him like absolutely furious with the Time Lords. That like, it absolutely made him like despise everyone, especially the Doctor. And like, they've hidden it inside the Matrix, and he discovered it trying to break in and hack into the systems. And so, Doctor, you have to like now experience this, and like, I will turn your life upside down. It's interesting, like the Master's hacked the Matrix before. So did the Master learn this this twist in Trial of the Time Lord? Did he find this out in the Deadly Assassins? The story seems to imply he found it after the end of time when he is returned back to Gallifrey, and this is the reason why he destroyed Gallifrey. So yeah, so the twist, the controversial twist. It turns out that there is, in way before the Time Lords, there was this child that was adopted by this woman, and it's the origins of the child is a mystery. She was just found out on a abandoned planet, on an empty planet with this strange figure up toward a portal, the Timeless Child. And this woman who found her adopted her and took her back to Gallifrey before the Time Lords existed. And life was fun, and she experimented on like trying to find out who this child is. But she also like raised her as her own. Tectayun was the name of the woman. Until one day, that girl falls off a cliff, and we also get like emerges of Brendan, which basically tells us that the Brendan storyline is connected to this, like these visions of Ireland, which the Doctor states in this episode that she's been having these visions, but like nothing in the episode implies that she was seeing these. It's very strange. And essentially, the regeneration is discovered here, the first time anyone had ever regenerated. And Tectayun did genetic experiments on the child to try and find out what this regeneration process is. It seemingly is that the child is immortal. It can regenerate until essentially like has an unlimited amount of regenerations. And Tectayun actually experimented, got successful, and she actually tested it on herself, and she was the second person to ever regenerate. Civilizations basically formed around this idea of regeneration, and a massive civilization which later on discovered time travel and became the foundation of Time Lord society. And that's essentially like the origins of the regeneration. But that child is still alive. That child is still going around. That child is the Doctor. Or at least, that's what the Master says. What I think this story really does, which is really interesting actually watching it back, and when you consider about the controversy, is that like the Master goes through this like detail about the Timeless Child and the regeneration process. He goes into detail, and then after he talks about that, it goes blank, and he's like, right, that's it, that's all the story. To which the Doctor is just like, who is the child? Where is the child now? And then the Master's just like, you don't know? Isn't it obvious? And he giggles. And we don't actually see like the ramifications of this. We just basically get it from the Master. So the Master could easily have been lying about the Doctor being the Timeless Child just to mess with her head. I think Chris Chibnall did a great way of like opening like a door, leaving a door open, so that if the twist was really like poorly handled, there's like a back door that's like, oh no wait, the Master was lying and the Doctor is a Time Lord. But the history of the regeneration, that's like the main like part of the story, but mainly people focus on the Doctor being the Timeless Child. The Doctor is now no longer a Time Lord in the mythology of Doctor Who. She is an unknown species of an unknown race which we've never seen apart from, of course, the Doctor. A lot of people got really angry with this, stating that it ruined the show for them, and like it completely messes the Doctor's character and ruins the mythology and the mystery of the Doctor. I do agree to a very small extent. The idea of going into this mythology of the Time Lords and realizing that the Doctor is essentially the founder, maybe unintentionally, but is the founder of this process, is like Jesusifying the Doctor, which is an issue I had with stories from the David Tennant era. So it's nothing like new to this story, but it is something I don't like about it. However, in terms of like ruining the mystery and ruining the character of the Doctor, has it? Because this story has like this big massive effect. But after like the Master like disappears as he works with a shard, there's so much I really want to talk about. I don't think I got enough time, but the Sacha Dhawan's master working with Patrick O'Kane's Lone Cybermen. Those scenes are just so much fun until the master kills a shard, and it's like that was a complete and utter waste. Although as I'm recording this, a shard has been appearing in lots of the trailers of Power of the Doctor, which is, as I'm recording this, I have not seen yet. So I'm really so excited to see a shard again. I hope they don't like kill him again like they did in this one. But it's really cool to see that a Cyberman on Gallifrey. But anyway, as the Doctor's trying to get out, she sees a projection of the fugitive Doctor, and essentially it's actually not actually stated, nothing actually stated in here. It's more like the Doctor theorizes that the fugitive Doctor is a Doctor from a previous life, and essentially, as the Master explained it, that the Doctor's life is real. The Doctor did grow up on Gallifrey, went to the Academy with the Master, and still left Gallifrey for reasons that we still don't know and should never be explained. But as the Master explains, that's all true, but it just wasn't your first life. And essentially, the fugitive Doctor is a Doctor pre-Hartnell, pre the first Doctor, at least the first one, like shown on the TV. That was a big controversial event. But what I find really strange and what I don't like about this scene is actually something I think a lot of people are completely dissing. A lot of people just focus on the fact that we have a pre-Hartnell Doctor and that's it. No. What I have issue with this scene with Jo Martin returning, which by the way, Jo Martin is awesome. I really wanted her to be the main Doctor at one point. But the fugitive Doctor is my issue. In this scene, the fugitive Doctor just kind of appears as a matrix, as maybe a subconscious part of the Doctor, to basically tell the Doctor that all this, in terms of her as a person, doesn't really matter. When has not really knowing who you are has changed anything about the Doctor, about her themselves. And I get the message. It's a really nice message, it's not who you were, it's about who you are now. But this is such a big event. This is such a canon-altering, a mythology-altering, event. And the story basically tells you that, in terms of narrative, in terms of the character, this doesn't actually change anything. The Doctor has previously just gone around travelling, mainly because, they love adventure, partially because they want to fight monsters and stuff. And then after the story, they travel the universe because they mainly like travelling and seeing the universe and also stopping monsters and stopping bad guys. Nothing changes in terms of what the Doctor is and who they are. We also get a scene where the Doctor tries to break out of the Matrix by overloading its circuits. This is easily one of the coolest scenes in the story, where she uses her psychic projection to basically fill out the Matrix, which, by the way, this is the most archive footage in any Doctor Who history, as we see a bunch of clips from the series, both new and classic, as we also get a projection of every single Doctor, including 2 actual colour footage of the first and second Doctors. For the second Doctor, I think this is the first time for the second Doctor that they've actually coloured in archive footage, all the archive footage. It's just really cool. But we also, in this story, it's heavily implied, again, there's so much heavily implied, about the Morbius Doctors being canon. For those of you who don't know, please watch my Brain of Morbius video. It's probably one of my better videos on the marathon. Highly recommended that. But in the story Brain of Morbius, the 4th Doctor story, he has a mental battle with the villain Morbius, and we see faces of the first 4 Doctors, as well as other faces which the writers, director, and the producer Philip Hinchcliffe at the time made as if they were pre-Hartnell Doctors that appeared before the first known Doctor was. And this story showing them faces right after the going down the line of faces, basically again suggests that these doctors are the Morbius doctors. There's a lot of people who've had a lot of arguments about the Morbius doctors, a massive controversial event, and a lot of people have just flat out lied about this, stating that like the writers and the directors, the producers, that wasn't their intention. It was the fact that it was there's supposed to be Morbius's faces, but no, that's a complete lie. And so that's like the main like bulk of like there's just this story basically says the Morbius doctors is canon, which is something which I wasn't expecting the revived era to do in its 12th run. It's so weird to like something I grew up as a child, a small little idea has now been like fully like almost like confirmed 12 years into the revived era. Almost a sequel to a story from 1975 and 1976. It's one of those if I remember correctly. But like, how mad is that? That's just absolutely insane. And so the Doctor breaks out. She finds Graham, Ryan, and Yaz. Goes into like where all the TARDISes are. We get a TARDIS design very similar to the Fugitive Doctors. Strange, but okay, awesome. And she basically sets them on a course where it'll take them back to Earth, as well as saving the few survivors. As she takes this thing called the Death Particle, a device that was created inside a shard. It's like there's so much I'm like missed out, but like I have to condense here. And basically it'll destroy all living matter on the planet, as the Master has essentially come up with this great master plan. Essentially, when he destroyed Gallifrey, as mentioned in Spyfall, he kept the bodies around. He kept the bodies basically warm enough. And essentially, he created a new race of Cybermen using the Cyberium, the Cyberium is now in the Master as he killed a shard. And he's created this new race of Cyber Masters. I absolutely like the idea, the concept, and the scene that they have. Really cool, really well handled. I don't like the design with this, like the straight mouth is now like a sad, and they got like these lines and this. There's so much like going on in terms of Cybermen design. Also, the scene where the Master turns around and tells one to shoot the other one. The way it's directed is a bit silly, where you have that Master, one of the Cyber Masters turning his head like out when the Master talks, as if to go like, "What? I don't want to do that." The Master shouts, and then he does it. Kills the Cybermen dead, only for like you see the regeneration particles come out, transforming him and regenerating him, and like that's a big like thing that the story basically opens up. And the Doctor cannot allow this, so she's about to use the Death Particle, and the Master's basically pushing her. Okay, I really wish I could have more time to talk about the Master. There's so much I love about this incarnation, especially in this story, but like there's so much to talk about, and I really need to wrap this up. And how the story ends, this is a bit like, I really hate this ending, where Sharmas actually like leaves the TARDIS from the crew, and he takes the Death Particle, and he's the one that like blows everything up. As you hear the Master like talking to the rest of the Cybermen, it's like, get in there quick! As the Doctor runs, trying to escape, and she finds another TARDIS, finds herself on back to the first planet that they were in, Ascension of the Cybermen, and finds her first TARDIS. As she's just like, right, that's it, the Master and all the Cyber Masters are destroyed. I've survived. Let's go and pick up Ryan, Yaz, and Graham and have a relax and breathe. Only for this story to end on a cliffhanger, very reminiscent of the Russell T Davies era, where June suddenly teleports inside the TARDIS, take the Doctor as a prisoner, and she teleports into a prison as the Doctor, as like in most of the scenes, cliffhangers in her 10th regeneration, she was just like, what? And that is the controversial Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. overall, this story feels like it's doing so much. The whole thing with the Cybermen and the thing, I absolutely love everything to do with the Cybermen for the most part, especially in part 1. And you really get a dread and feel for the Shard. And then like the really like controversial and the story arc heavy stuff of series 12 comes in, and it's a lot of stuff that I dislike about the series. And it's such a hard story to wrap your brain around. But I think overall, I think this story is a failure because it does so much. It does so, it seems to do so much, seems to have so much going for it, but does actually surprisingly little. Really, Graham and Ryan are the only ones, Graham and Yaz are the only ones that really get like proper like development, because you see more of their bond together. The rest of the cast seem to have these developments, especially the Doctor, have these developments, have these massive things revealed and spoken upon them. But nothing really changes, nothing really like affects them in terms of characters. And the story seems to go over its way to go, yes, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. We still got to stuck to the status quo to some regard. Such a disappointment in that regard. And like, I don't know. There's way too much opinion. There's a lot of stuff I love. There's a lot of stuff I hate. But the main problem with the story is that it is part of a huger connected. By the way, having a Cyberman story where the Doctor's mainly focusing on fighting these Cybermen and surviving and the thing, and then all of a sudden it's a master story about the revelation of the timeless child. And like you could really feel, especially in the second episode, that like the Cybermen stuff takes a massive backseat, and like the story completely does a 180, and it's like it's so story arcy heavy. I really don't like that, and I really wish that the Timeless Children and the Cybermen stuff were two separate stories, two separate episodes, two separate like storylines. But anyway, so that is Ascension of Cybermen and the Timeless Children. So join me next time as we get reunited to some new friends, old friends and old enemies, as the Doctor must say goodbye to not one, but two of her companions. So join me next time for Revolution of the Daleks. Revolton of the Daleks? I don't know how to say that. So join me next time for that episode. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!